Welcome to True Crime Case Files. Today, we delve into a chilling case that rocked the sunny shores of West Palm Beach in the fall of 1988. A mother's love, a celebration turned tragedy, and a web of deceit and betrayal. This is the story of Lisette DiPaolo, a woman poisoned by her son's birthday cake. But the question that haunts this case, who is the killer? On the morning of November 12, 1988, West Palm Beach residents awoke to the kind of crisp, sunny weather that heralded the approach of Thanksgiving. The local news buzzed with coverage of the recent election, where George H.W. Bush had just been elected president, promising a kinder, gentler nation. Amidst this backdrop of national transition, a personal tragedy was unfolding in a quiet suburban neighborhood on the edge of the city. It was 10:15 a.m. when Michael DiPaolo arrived at his family home on Maplewood Drive. The 18-year-old had planned to assist with preparations for his younger brother Jamie's 12th birthday party. Instead, he stumbled upon a scene that would haunt him for years to come. His mother, Lisette DiPaolo, lay motionless on the kitchen floor, her body still as if in repose, a stark contrast to the festive decorations that adorned the room. The birthday cake, a chocolate confection she had been making for Jessica, sat untouched on the counter. In a state of shock, Michael reached for the cordless phone, a recent addition to the DiPaolo household, advertised heavily in the latest Sears catalog, and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. His voice cracked as he spoke to the dispatcher, conveying the urgency of the situation while struggling to maintain his composure. He reported no signs of forced entry, no immediate evidence of violence, just an eerie stillness that suggested a domestic scene frozen in time. The first responders arrived swiftly, their sirens cutting through the suburban calm. Neighbors peeked through curtains and gathered in hushed clusters on manicured lawns, their curiosity piqued by the unusual flurry of activity. As the police secured the area, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. The DiPaolo family, known for their community involvement and the friendly demeanor of Lisette, a frequent volunteer at the local elementary school, had become the center of a chilling investigation. Lisette DiPaolo, at 45 years of age, was the epitome of the dedicated 1980s housewife and mother. Living in West Palm Beach, she had devoted her life to the well-being of her husband, Nikki, and their 3 children. Although her own dreams of becoming an artist had been shelved in favor of supporting her family, she found joy in the simplicity of her domestic life. Her home on Maplewood Drive was often the hub of neighborhood gatherings, and her presence was a staple at PTA meetings for the local elementary school. A graduate of Forest Hill Community High School, Lisette had married young and put her aspirations on hold. She was known for her nurturing spirit, her involvement in organizing school fundraisers, and her passion for creating elaborate birthday parties for her children. As a mother, she was both gentle and firm, instilling in her children the value of education and community service. In the days before her untimely death, Lisette had been seen in high spirits, picking up party supplies from the nearby Publix where her husband managed. She had chatted amiably with cashiers, her shopping cart filled with the latest Hasbro toys and Betty Crocker cake mixes, the latter a testament to the upcoming birthday celebration. Friends reported that she had been excitedly discussing plans to enroll in art classes at the Norton Gallery and School of Art, hinting at a desire to revisit her long-dormant passion for painting. Her dreams, however, would remain unfulfilled. The DiPaolo family, once a portrait of suburban contentment, now found themselves at the heart of a dark mystery. As the community grappled with the news, the local West Palm Beach Post would soon carry headlines not of Lisette's community achievements, but of the tragic circumstances of her death, leaving readers to question how such a fate could befall someone so seemingly content and loved. The quiet of Maplewood Drive was pierced by the wail of sirens as West Palm Beach police officers descended upon the DiPaolo residence. The time was approximately 10:30 a.m. on that fateful November morning. Detective Hubert Marcusio, a veteran with a sharp instinct honed through years on the force, and his partner, Detective Jenny Raleigh, known for her meticulous attention to detail, were first to enter the home. The DiPaolo kitchen, typically a haven of warmth and family gatherings, had transformed into a sterile crime scene. The body of Lisette DiPaolo was found adjacent to the kitchen island, her final moments seemingly peaceful, devoid of any signs of a struggle. The birthday cake, which she had lovingly prepared for her son, now stood as a silent witness to her demise. The detectives moved methodically, cordoning off the area with yellow police tape, a stark contrast to the pastel birthday decorations that fluttered in the breeze of the ceiling fan. They took note of the serene weather outside, a mocking reminder of the storm that had just entered their professional lives. Forensic technicians in white coveralls dusted for fingerprints and gathered samples, while the faint sounds of Peter Gabriel's Red Rain played from a radio left on in the living room. The lyrics an unintentional soundtrack to the unfolding investigation. The police photographers documented every angle, capturing the scene in a series of Polaroids that would later be scrutinized for any clue. Initial observations suggested poisoning as the cause of death, a method that left no visible trace on the victim. The lack of blood or disarray suggested a killer who was calculated and familiar with the home. The crime scene was a puzzle, each piece meticulously collected and labeled, from the glass of water on the counter to the receipt for a recent purchase of rat poison found tucked away in a drawer, a common household item that now took on a sinister significance. As the investigation commenced, the community of West Palm Beach remained glued to their television screens, watching the local WPTV News Channel 5 for updates on a case that seemed more akin to a plot from a Hollywood thriller than the reality of their peaceful town. As dusk fell on West Palm Beach on November 12th, the investigation into Lisette D. Paulo's death began to intensify. Attention swiftly turned to suspect number 1, Nicky D. Paulo, the 45-year-old husband of the victim and a local Publix manager. Known for his charismatic personality and a seemingly devoted family man, Nicky's facade began to crumble under scrutiny. Detectives Marcusio and Raleigh brought Nicky in for questioning, seeking to understand the man behind the public persona. He was a product of his time, a man who prided himself on his managerial role at one of the most popular supermarket chains in the South, a position he'd secured not long after the company's expansion and rebranding efforts in the mid-'80s. Yet, beneath the surface, Nicky harbored secrets that were incongruent with the family values he publicly espoused. In the interrogation room, the air was thick with tension. Nicky, wearing polo shirt and slacks, the casual Friday attire still from his workday, presented a stark contrast to the sterile environment. He sat rigidly, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, as the detectives probed into his personal life. The recent revelation of his affair with a younger woman, known to frequent the popular local club, Heartbreakers Lounge, had shattered the image of marital bliss he had worked hard to maintain. His dreams, once centered around a carefree life and the avoidance of scandal, were now at risk of being exposed. When questioned about his whereabouts at the time of his wife's death, Nicky's responses were a blend of defensiveness and calculated calm. His voice wavered when confronted with evidence of his infidelity, and his eyes darted around the room, avoiding direct contact with the detectives. Despite his attempts to project innocence, the interrogation revealed cracks in Nicky's demeanor. The police noted his every inconsistency and evasion, aware that the man before them could very well be responsible for a crime that had turned a birthday celebration into a day of mourning. As the investigation unfolded, the West Palm Beach Police Department turned its focus to suspect number 2, Louise Shapiro, known by her stage name, Hannah Happy Place. At just 20 years old, Louise was an exotic dancer at Heartbreakers Lounge, a neon-lit establishment that stood in stark contrast to the family-oriented image of the local Publix managed by Nicky D. Paulo. Her involvement with Nicky, despite his marital status, had quickly elevated her from a background player to a key figure in the case. Louise, with aspirations that reached far beyond the smoke-filled ambience of the club, had always dreamt of escaping the confines of her current life. She envisioned a future filled with stability and affluence, a stark departure from the glitter and stilettos that marked her nights. Yet, her connection to Nicky D. Paulo placed her squarely in the middle of a murder investigation, her dreams momentarily eclipsed by the harsh glare of interrogation room lights. Detectives Marcusio and Raleigh sat across from Louise as she recounted her whereabouts on the day of Lisette's death. The room was silent except for the hum of the aging air conditioner and the occasional shuffle of papers. Louise, clad in a faded denim jacket, a stark reminder of the era's fashion, maintained a composed exterior. Her answers were measured, her voice betraying none of the nervous energy that one might expect from someone in her precarious position. Despite her calm demeanor, the detectives noted the subtle inconsistencies in her story, the slight hesitation before answering questions about her relationship with Nicky. Her motives remained unclear, but her proximity to the D. Paulo family and her intimate involvement with the prime suspect placed her under a cloud of suspicion. As the interview concluded, the evening news on the small television in the corner of the station reported on the rising tensions of the Cold War, a reminder of the global uncertainties of the time. Yet, for the detectives, the most pressing uncertainty was much closer to home, lying in the heart of the seemingly idyllic West Palm Beach community. The investigation took a decisive turn on November 15, 1988. The weather in West Palm Beach was unseasonably cool, a brisk wind signaling the onset of winter. It was on this day that detectives uncovered a critical piece of evidence that would reshape their understanding of Lisette DePaulo's death. Amidst the remnants of the family's refuse, a receipt from a local Ace Hardware was retrieved, dated just 1 week prior to the tragic event. The item of interest? Arsenic-based rat poison, a substance that, in the right doses, could turn from pest control to a lethal weapon. The discovery prompted an immediate response from the West Palm Beach Police Department. Detectives Marcusio and Raleigh, now deeply entrenched in the case, recognized the gravity of this new lead. The receipt, a seemingly innocuous slip of paper, had been discarded alongside advertisements for the upcoming Black Friday sales, a stark reminder of the consumer frenzy that was to come. The police's next steps were calculated and swift. Forensic experts were called in to analyze the handwriting on the receipt, comparing it with samples from the DePaulo household. Meanwhile, the local media, including stations like WPC Channel 12, were abuzz with speculation, their broadcasts filled with images of the DePaulo residence cordoned off with police tape. A stark juxtaposition to the festive decorations that still adorn the home. As the community of West Palm Beach tuned into their nightly news, the case of Lisette DePaulo had become a fixture in the public consciousness, a sobering reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of suburban life. The police were determined to piece together the puzzle, and with this new evidence, they were one step closer to uncovering the truth behind the facade of normalcy that had shattered on that November day. In the wake of the new evidence, the focus of the investigation shifted to suspect number 3, Concepcion Alboret, a 48-year-old Cuban immigrant who served as the DePaulo family's maid. Having arrived in the United States during the Mariel boat lift, Concepcion sought the American dream but found herself in a tenuous position, navigating cultural adjustments and personal challenges, including her mental health. Concepcion's aspirations for a better life in America were often overshadowed by her struggles. She envisioned reuniting with family members still in Cuba and starting anew. Yet, her relationship with Lisette had been fraught with tension, marked by language barriers and misunderstandings. Concepcion's recent outbursts had raised eyebrows in the DePaulo household, and her access to the home made her a person of interest to the police. On a day when the Miami Herald headlines were dominated by the aftermath of Hurricane Joan's devastation in Nicaragua, the detectives brought Concepcion in for questioning. The interrogation room, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of her native Havana, seemed to close in on her as she faced the detectives. Her demeanor was a mix of fear and defiance, her hands wringing the hem of her skirt as she spoke. Detective Marcusio, with a gentle firmness, asked her about the receipt for the arsenic and her interactions with the family leading up to Lisette's death. Concepcion's responses were punctuated by moments of clarity and confusion, her emotional state fluctuating as she recounted her version of events. The detectives took note of her agitation, particularly when discussing her relationship with Lisette, but they also recognized the signs of someone overwhelmed by their circumstances. As the session ended, Concepcion was released, but the questions lingered. The police continued their meticulous work, aware that the resolution to this case lay in the details, much like the intricate storylines of the popular soap operas that flickered on TV screens across the nation, including Days of Our Lives, which was captivating viewers with its tales of drama and intrigue. The investigation into Lisette DePaulo's death reached a critical juncture when detectives identified the murderer. The suspect was none other than Nicky DePaulo, the 45-year-old husband whose public persona as a successful Publix manager and family man had begun to unravel. Nicky, a man who had once exuded confidence and charm, was found to have a darker side, one driven by self-preservation and a fear of losing control. His aspirations for a life unencumbered by familial responsibilities had led him down a path of deceit. It was discovered that Nicky, fearing the financial and social repercussions of a divorce following the revelation of his affair, had meticulously planned the murder of his wife. The detectives pieced together Nicky's actions, revealing a calculated approach to the crime. He had exploited the trust inherent within the family, ensuring that the arsenic-laced birthday cake would be consumed by Lisette. It was a plan executed with chilling precision, one that would leave no obvious signs of foul play and cast doubt on the cause of death. As the case unfolded, the DePaulo residence, once a symbol of suburban success, had become a crime scene that drew morbid curiosity. The local news outlets, including the Palm Beach Post, reported on the developments with a fervor that mirrored the public's shock and fascination. The story of the DiPaolo family's tragedy shared airtime with national news, such as the vice presidential transition from George H.W. Bush to Dan Quayle, and local happenings, like the preparations for the upcoming Palm Beach boat show. The evidence against Nicky was irrefutable. His motive, rooted in a desire to maintain his facade and avoid the consequences of his actions, was clear. The police had uncovered the truth behind the veneer of normality, exposing a tale of betrayal that echoed the themes of greed and deception found in the era's popular films, such as Dangerous Liaisons, which was captivating audiences nationwide. On the morning of November 20, 1988, under a sky that was a clear azure, unmarred by the typical humidity of Florida's climate, West Palm Beach police officers made their way to the Publix supermarket where Nicky DiPaolo served as manager. The bustling store, prepping for the Thanksgiving rush and adorned with posters advertising butterball turkeys and ocean spray cranberry sauce, was about to become the backdrop for an arrest that would send ripples through the community. Nicky was in the midst of overseeing the placement of a promotional stand for stovetop stuffing when the detectives arrived. The store's festive atmosphere, with customers eagerly discussing the latest episode of Roseanne, which had aired the previous night, contrasted sharply with the gravity of the situation unfolding. As Detective Marcusio read Nicky's rights, the manager's expression shifted from one of confusion to dawning realization. The facade of the affable grocery manager crumbled as he was led away in handcuffs, the eyes of his employees and patrons upon him. The arrest was a culmination of meticulous police work, piecing together a timeline of deceit that pointed irrefutably to Nicky as the orchestrator of his wife's murder. His reaction was one of resignation, the fight drained from him as the evidence mounted and his options dwindled. News of the arrest spread quickly, with local radio stations interrupting regular programming to deliver updates. The DiPaolo family's private turmoil had become public spectacle, with reporters and camera crews descending upon the neighborhood to capture the reactions of stunned neighbors and the victim's family. The family, still reeling from the loss of Lisette, now faced the grim reality of Nicky's betrayal. Their grief was compounded by the media circus that surrounded them, with journalists from the Palm Beach Post and competing outlets clamoring for exclusive insights into the case. As Nicky DiPaolo was processed at the station, the DiPaolo children were left to grapple with the magnitude of their father's actions. The community of West Palm Beach, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile the image of the man they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer who had been hiding in plain sight. The trial of Nicky DiPaolo commenced amidst a media frenzy, with the West Palm Beach courthouse becoming the epicenter of local and national attention. It was a scene reflective of the era's high-profile court cases, which often played out on television screens across America, much like the sensationalized stories on A Current Affair. Prosecutor Angela Navarro, a formidable presence at 38, approached the case with a dogged determination that had become her trademark. Her reputation for securing convictions was well known in the legal community, and she presented the evidence against Nicky with a clarity and precision that left little room for doubt. She painted a picture of a man whose infidelity and fear of losing his comfortable lifestyle had driven him to commit an unspeakable act against his own wife. In contrast, defense attorney Richard Daniel, 50, known for his suave demeanor and sharp suits reminiscent of Armani's latest line, which had been the talk of the town since the recent fashion shows, crafted a defense rooted in casting shadows of uncertainty. He highlighted the lack of direct evidence and played on the jury's emotions, suggesting that Nicky, a well-regarded member of the community and a father of 3, was incapable of such a heinous crime. The courtroom was packed daily, with the DiPaolo children and Lisette's extended family in attendance, their expressions a mix of sorrow and stoicism. They clung to each other during the most harrowing parts of the testimony, seeking comfort in the face of their shared tragedy. As the trial progressed, it became a local sensation, with residents of West Palm Beach following the proceedings with the same rapt attention as they did the recent World Series, where the Los Angeles Dodgers had clinched victory. The case was dissected and debated in homes, offices, and the bustling aisles of supermarkets, including the very Publix that Nicky once managed. The emotional toll on the victim's family was palpable, their lives irrevocably altered by the events that had transpired. As the trial drew to a close, the community braced for a verdict, one that would either bring closure to a family torn apart by betrayal or leave them grappling with the agony of an unresolved justice. The tension in the West Palm Beach courthouse was palpable as the jury returned with a verdict after days of deliberation. Onlookers, who had been following the trial as closely as they tracked the unfolding events of the U.S. presidential election, waited with bated breath. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. Guilty, Nicky DiPaolo was convicted of the first-degree murder of his wife, Lisette. Prosecutor Angela Navarro's relentless pursuit had paid off, her narrative of a man driven to murder by selfish motives resonating with the jury. The evidence, circumstantial but compelling, painted a damning picture of Nicky's betrayal. The sentencing was swift, the judge imposing a life sentence without the possibility of parole, a decision that reverberated through the community and the DiPaolo family. Some felt the sentence was too harsh for a man who had no prior criminal record, a sentiment echoed in letters to the editor in the Palm Beach Post. Others argued it was too lenient, unable to reconcile the heinous nature of the crime with anything short of the death penalty, a topic of heated debate on the Donahue show that aired during the trial. The impact of the sentencing on the DiPaolo children was profound, their lives now irrevocably altered by the loss of both parents, one to death, the other to the penal system. The family, including Lisette's relatives who had flown in from as far as California, leaving behind the wildfires that had been raging through the state, were left to grapple with a mixture of relief and sorrow. The verdict offered a semblance of closure, but the wounds inflicted by the tragedy would take much longer to heal. As Nicky was led away, his expression was one of resignation, the reality of his actions and their consequences finally setting in. The community of West Palm Beach, having been captivated by the case, slowly began to return to normalcy, the trial's conclusion allowing them to move past the sensational story that had dominated the local news cycle. As the gavel fell on the final chapter of the trial, the community of West Palm Beach and those involved in the DiPaolo case began the arduous process of moving forward. The media circus that had descended upon the city slowly dissipated, with the local news shifting focus to the upcoming holiday season and the excitement surrounding the annual Palm Beach Boat Show. The DiPaolo children, now facing a future without both parents, sought solace in each other and the support of close relatives. They grappled with the complexities of their grief, each finding different paths to healing and understanding. Michael, the eldest, took on the role of protector and caretaker for his younger siblings, his own dreams set aside in the wake of family tragedy. Detectives Marcusio and Raleigh, who had become household names through their association with the case, returned to their duties. The weight of the investigation, however, remained with them, the echoes of the courtroom testimonies and the sight of the DiPaolo family's anguish lingering in their minds as they pursued justice in new cases. Concepcion Alboret, the family's maid who had been briefly entangled in the web of suspicion, attempted to rebuild her life. The cloud of the case had cast a long shadow, but she found comfort in the local Cuban community, which rallied around her, providing support as she navigated the complexities of life as an immigrant in America. Louise Shapiro, once known as Hannah Happy Place, left the nightlife of Heartbreakers Lounge behind, seeking anonymity and a fresh start away from the glare of the spotlight that the case had shone on her. She dreamed of a new identity, one unmarred by the scandal and whispers of the past. The DiPaolo family home, once a symbol of suburban success, was sold. New families moved into the neighborhood, unaware or unfazed by the history of the quiet house on Maplewood Drive. Life, as it invariably does, continued. As the years passed, the DiPaolo case became a cautionary tale, a story occasionally revisited in true crime retrospectives on networks like A&E, serving as a somber reminder of the fragility of trust and the depths of human deceit. The DiPaolo case remains a somber reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors and the lengths to which people will go to protect their secrets. As the sun sets on another episode of True Crime Case Files, we're left to ponder the fragile nature of trust and the price of betrayal. Thank you for joining us. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and we'll see you next time. Hey, True Crime Case Solvers, interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe, True Crime Case Solvers.